had always trusted my wife more than anyone else in the world. We had been married for 7 years, and in that time I thought we had built a bond that could not be broken. I worked hard every day to make sure she had everything she needed, and she always told me she appreciated it. I believed her, never thought I would have a reason to doubt her until one Thursday evening when she casually mentioned that she was going on a short trip with her childhood friend. The way she said it was light, almost too light, like she wanted it to sound normal. But I felt a small shift inside me. I did not know why yet, but something felt off. I asked her who this childhood friend was, and she told me his name, a name I had never heard before in all the years we had been together. She said they had grown up in the same neighborhood and had reconnected recently through social media. She added that it was just going to be a fun little getaway for a few days to catch up and relax. I nodded, but inside my chest something tightened. That night I could not sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling and replaying the way she smiled when she said his name. There was a softness there that made my stomach turn. I told myself maybe I was overthinking, but then I realized I had never seen her that excited about a trip with me in years. The next morning she was packing early. She hummed to herself while folding her clothes. She wore a new perfume I had not smelled before. When I asked where, she got it. She said it was a gift from a friend. I did not push, but every answer she gave me just made the knot inside me grow tighter. She left in the afternoon saying she would text me once she arrived, but hours passed with no message. I sat on the couch staring at my phone until finally a short text came saying she had reached safely. No details, no photo, no "I miss you," just a flat update. My instincts screamed at me something was not right. So I made a decision I had never made before. I was going to follow her. The next morning I told my boss I needed a couple of days off. I packed lightly, grabbed my car keys, and set out. I had an idea of where she might be because I had checked her browser history 2 nights before and saw a hotel booking under her name. It was in a city 3 hours away. I drove with my heart pounding, my hands tight on the wheel. I kept telling myself I might be wrong. I might be making a fool of myself, but I needed to know I could not just sit at home wondering. When I arrived in the city, I parked a few streets away from the hotel and waited. I knew her car well, and I spotted it in the lot. My chest tightened seeing it there. I got out and kept my distance from the entrance, hiding behind a row of parked cars. Around noon, she walked out wearing a dress I had never seen before. It was short and elegant. She was laughing, her head tilted toward a tall man beside her. He was holding her hand, not in a casual way, but like he owned it. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I followed them on foot as they walked down the street. They went into a small cafe and sat at a table in the corner. I sat far enough to not be noticed, but close enough to see their faces. The way they looked at each other was not the way old friends looked. It was the way lovers looked, the kind of gaze that spoke of secrets and late nights and moments you could not share with anyone else. I felt my jaw clench. I wanted to walk up to them and demand answers, but I stayed where I was gripping my knees so hard my knuckles turned white. They stayed in the cafe for over an hour, laughing, leaning close, sharing bites of food. Every gesture burned into my memory when they left. They walked back to the hotel, and I followed just far enough behind to see them go inside together. I stood there in the street for what felt like forever, staring at the closed door. My stomach felt heavy, my mind screaming, but my body frozen. I finally turned away and walked back to my car. I knew I needed to think. I could not storm in without a plan. That night I booked a room at a cheap motel a few blocks away. I sat on the bed staring at the wall, trying to make sense of everything. My phone buzzed. It was a text from her saying she missed me and could not wait to be back home. The lie was like a knife twisting in my chest. I typed a reply saying I missed her too. My hands shook as I sent it. Lying there in that dimly lit room, I realized I was standing on the edge of something that would change everything forever. I did not know if I was ready for the truth, but I knew I could not turn back now. Tomorrow I would find out exactly what she was hiding and why she thought she could keep it from me, even if it meant breaking myself in the process. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, my mind already replaying the image of her holding that man's hand. Every detail felt burned into my memory, and the more I thought about it, the more the pit in my stomach grew. I knew I could not just watch from a distance again today. I needed to get closer. I needed to hear something to confirm what my eyes had already told me. I left my motel room quietly and walked toward the hotel where she was staying. The city streets were still quiet, the air crisp. I kept my hood up and stayed in the shadows near the entrance. The front lobby was partially visible from where I stood, and I waited just far enough away to not be noticed. Around 8 in the morning, I saw him walk out first wearing casual clothes and sunglasses. He looked too relaxed, like he was on vacation, not like a man hiding an affair. A few minutes later, she stepped out dressed in a light sundress, her hair tied up in a way she never wore for me. She looked different, freer in a way that made my chest ache. They walked together to a nearby park, stopping for coffee along the way. I followed from across the street, always keeping something between us. When they reached a quiet bench, they sat close, his arm draped around her shoulders. She leaned into him without hesitation. The sight was like a physical punch. I could hear bits of their conversation carried by the morning breeze, laughter, soft whispers, and then I heard her say his name, followed by, "I've missed you so much." My whole body tensed. It felt surreal watching my wife, the woman who used to curl up next to me every night, speak those words to another man. I wanted to scream, but I bit down hard on my lip instead. The more I stood there, the more I realized this was not some sudden fling. This was deeper. Their comfort around each other, their familiarity. It felt like this had been going on for a long time. They stayed in the park for nearly an hour before heading toward the edge of the city. I kept my distance in my car this time, trailing them carefully, until they pulled up to a small rental cottage, tucked away on a side road. It was secluded, surrounded by trees. Like it was meant to keep secrets, they went inside, without even checking their surroundings. I sat there in my car, staring at that door for what felt like hours, my thoughts twisting in every direction. Was she planning to leave me for him? Was this trip just an excuse to be with him without having to hide? Was I just a fool holding on to something that had already been gone for years? I reached for my phone, scrolling through our old messages and photos, each one now feeling like a lie. As the sun started to set, they finally came back out. He was carrying a bag, and she had a scarf loosely draped around her neck. She looked content. Too content. They drove back to the hotel, and I followed again, this time, parking right behind their lot. I got out pretending to be on the phone as I walked past their car, just in time to hear her say to him, "I wish this weekend didn't have to end." That one sentence told me everything. I needed to know she wasn't just visiting an old friend, she was living a second life, and I was the stranger in the shadows watching it unfold. I went back to my motel that night with my mind set on one thing. I wasn't just going to catch her. I was going to make sure she never saw me coming. If you want, I can make part 3, even more tense and detailed so the suspense stays heavy. That night, after returning to the hotel, I could barely sleep, my mind replaying every image and every sound from the rooftop over and over again. It was like the scene had been burned into my brain. I could see her hand on his arm. I could hear the way she laughed at his whispers. I could feel the way the air seemed to shift when I realized the woman I had loved and trusted for years had chosen someone else over the life we built together. I lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, wondering how a single day could dismantle everything. I thought I knew about her, about us, about myself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash the lamp on the table. I wanted to call her right then and there and demand an explanation, but I also knew that nothing she could say would erase what I had seen with my own eyes. In the morning, I woke up with a strange kind of calm, as if my body had finally accepted the truth, and now my mind could focus on what came next. I decided I would not confront her with blind anger. I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I would plan this carefully, so that when the moment came, she would understand exactly what she had done and what it had cost her. I started by gathering proof. I went back to the rooftop lounge, pretending to be a guest who had misplaced his wallet, and in the process, I managed to speak to one of the servers after slipping him a generous tip. He told me the man she was with had been staying at the same hotel for 3 nights in a suite on the top floor. The name he gave me matched the one I had seen on the luggage tag hanging from the chair next to theirs. I wrote it all down, every detail, time, date, room number, and anything else that could prove what I already knew. For the next 2 days, I followed them quietly, staying far enough behind that neither of them noticed me. They went shopping together, strolling through markets, buying scarves and sunglasses. They took a boat ride at sunset with their arms casually wrapped around each other. They even posed for photos, taken by strangers, pretending to be just another couple on vacation. Each moment was another knife twisting deeper into me, but I endured it because I knew I would need all of this later. I took photos from a distance and videos when I could, my hands shaking. Sometimes not from fear of being caught, but from the raw rage I was holding inside. On the 3rd night, they went to a small restaurant tucked away down a narrow street. I could see them through the window, their faces lit by the warm glow of the candles on the table. He reached across and touched her hand, and she did not pull away. In that moment, something inside me broke completely, not in a way that made me weaker, but in a way that made me certain I could never go back to the life we had before. I left before the meal ended and walked the streets for hours, thinking about how I had given her my loyalty, my trust, my years, and how she had thrown it all away for someone who probably would not even be around in a few months. When I returned home before her, I started preparing my exit, but not without ensuring the truth would be impossible for her to hide. I compiled every photo, every video, every receipt, and every bit of information I had gathered into a single file and sent copies to myself for safekeeping. I contacted a lawyer explaining the situation and laying out my plan. I did not want to simply leave. I wanted her to be left facing the reality of what she had done in a way that she could never rewrite or soften with lies. I made arrangements to move my things out of the house while she was still away, leaving only the bare furniture and none of my personal belongings. When she finally returned, I was not there to greet her. The house felt empty and cold on purpose. I had left a single envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was a printed photo of her and him sitting together on the boat, arms around each other, smiling with the same expression she used to have when she looked at me. There was also a letter, short and direct, telling her I knew everything and that she no longer needed to explain because the marriage was over. At the bottom of the letter was the contact information for my lawyer and the note that he had already filed for divorce. She called me dozens of times that night. I did not answer. She sent messages ranging from denial to rage to desperate apologies. I read them all but responded to none. She even tried to show up at the place I was staying, but I refused to open the door. The truth was, I no longer cared about her words because her actions had already told me everything. I needed to know the woman I had loved was gone, replaced by someone who could lie to my face and share a bed with another man without a shred of guilt. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I found a new apartment far from the places we had once shared. I spent more time with friends and family who reminded me what real loyalty looked like, and I allowed myself to grieve not just the end of the marriage, but the years I had invested in someone who ultimately proved unworthy of them. The divorce moved quickly thanks to the evidence I had, and soon enough it was finalized with terms that left her regretting far more than just being caught. Months later, I heard from mutual acquaintances that the man she had been with had already moved on to someone else, leaving her exactly where she had left me, alone, and with nothing but the memories of a love she had destroyed. It was not the satisfaction I thought I would feel, but it was a reminder that the truth always has a way of catching up, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away with your dignity intact while the other person is left to live with the mess they created. Even now, when I think back to that trip and everything that followed, I realized that following her that day was the moment my life began to change, not because I caught her in a lie, but because I finally understood my own worth. I had been holding on to something that was already gone, and letting go was the first step toward something better, toward a life where I never again had to question the loyalty of the person I loved. I do not miss her, and I do not miss the life we had. I only wish I had seen the truth sooner, but I am grateful I saw it when I did, because it gave me the freedom to start over on my own terms and never settle for less than the respect I deserve.